Hey everyone, Laura here, your intuitive lifestylist. I am here with your reading for February. Um, as you've probably noticed by now, the energy of the month is not exactly the easiest to deal with. In fact, it's almost as though we have entered this new phase of fuckery. This new phase of, well, how can it get worse? Or it can't get much worse than this. And yet we seem to find some way through which it can. Um, and I say that both seriously and also jokingly. And if you're confused, what I mean by that, basically, it is the understanding that we are in a position where we have so much that is coming up to the surface within our own being, within our own, you know, person. It can be trauma from a past life. It can be trauma from this lifetime. It can basically be anything at all that, in essence, takes us off our game, places us in a position where we feel out of connection with self, and ultimately where we feel that we are emotionally and mentally, cognitively, and energetically out of sync with what we desire, with how we want to feel. And this can create patterns of behavior that we actually thought we had handled already, that we had dealt with already, that there was no need, like, one and done, already addressed this, don't need to come back to it. And what many of us are finding right now is that that is not necessarily the case. For many of us, what is coming to the surface is that which we've either underprocessed, like not processed at all, or we were like many people who had this idea that healing was a journey, was a destination, rather than it being a journey. And what I mean by that is that so long as there is breath running through our bodies, so long as we are above ground, we are living a human experience. And that means with that, there are going to be triggering events. There are going to be circumstances, situations, things that make us feel in a disagreeable way. And rather than getting locked into this mentality that it's a bad thing, that we have somehow failed ourselves, that we have, you know, anything, any thoughts, any beliefs, any feelings that would be within the continuum of shame or blame or self-loathing, or even just being mad. Like, why am I dealing with this again? We want to move and pivot as far away from emotions of that kind as we can, and as fast as we can. And the reason why is because ultimately, what we are basically doing is adding more on top of what is coming up, that is trying to come up because it's asking for your love. It's asking for your nurturing. It's asking you for your attention. And if you are too busy shaming it or yourself, then there's no possible way that you are going to be able to clear what's underneath. You're just pushing more into the shadows. You're pushing more in that you're going to have to clear away at another date and wonder why it is that you're unable to get past certain things. Now, the month of February isn't going to be a negative thing. It's not as though all of, this month is going to be crap. But this is a month of clearing. This is a month of letting go. This is a month of taking a look at what it is that we are doing, what it is that we are feeling, what habits are ruling our lives, and whether or not they serve us. And if they don't serve us, we are going to be pushed into a place of letting them go. And whether it is by the friction of cumbersome, uncomfortable, difficult situations, or of our own accord, our own volition, ultimately, it is going to happen one way or another. And for a good number of us, that is going to prove the challenge, because most of us spend the majority of our time looking outside of us for the answer to what's happening within us. We will do anything to avoid going back into the shadowy realms of our own feelings, our own trauma, our own cycles, our own behavior, our own habits, our own beliefs, thoughts, etc. And never mind that we are creating then an energetic ecosystem or atmosphere that is riddled with the very things that we don't want to feel, that we don't want to experience, that's actually attracting all of that to us. But we are also in a position where we are basically forcing, if you will, the universal flow of energy to push even harder upon us. Which means that whether the clearing is as easeful and graceful and beautiful and healing as it can be, or if it is a knockdown, drag out fight, is ultimately up to us. Because whether you come out battered and bruised or radiant and filled with buoyant energy is ultimately, it's our choice. Nobody can make it for us. I can't force you. Your partner can't force you. Your friends can't force you. Legitimately, the only person that can make the decision to willingly, of their own volition, go in and willingly expose and investigate and explore those hidden aspects of self is ourself. We're the only ones that can do it. And those who are willing are those who are going to ultimately come into a position where they feel 100% better about themselves, about their lives, about everything that goes on around them. But it is up to us, because there is a lot to learn. And the more that we can excavate, the more that we can shed, the more that we are then free and clear to open up to everything that is waiting to come in. And the more that we can clear any shit that is in our energetic ecosystem, that is cognitively taking up bandwidth, that is emotionally stealing bandwidth, that is holding us back from all of that, and even repelling it away from us. So February is a month to meet ourselves where we are at. The message that kept coming through is let it be. Get curious, examine, explore. Because if we can shift the observation and therefore the meaning that we attach to whatever comes up for us, the more that we put ourselves in a position of learning from it rather than being taken down by it. Again, up to us. And of course, all of this is going to be punctuated with really high moments. That's kind of what makes the energy of February so unique and very interesting. Because those of us who understand, okay, I have to tend to the self, I have to take care of myself, they're going to be less preoccupied with what is transpiring outside of them. And again, that doesn't mean that there's no care. It means we're not caring. We're not allowing the external to impact the internal. And when we can do that successfully, then we are in a position where we can appropriate our attention inwards on what it is that we have to take care of in the self. We're not being impacted by the collective consciousness, which is going to be just one roller coaster after another, which is good because even on a micro personal level, the energy of February is quite erratic. It's up, it's down, it's left, it's right. It's all over the place. One moment you're feeling great, the next moment you're crying into your pillow. One moment you feel like the world is literally in your hands and you can do anything, and the next you feel like you can't succeed at anything. And it's enough that even the strongest amongst us are going to feel it. They're going to be impacted. And whether they realize where it's coming from or not is really irrelevant. The only thing that really matters is that ultimately, the more we are aware of what is going on, the more that we can consciously move through it. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be super easy. Doesn't mean that it is always going to be, super happy and that, no bumps in the road. We are humans having a human experience, and we're here to taste from the entire buffet of life. And that includes meals that we're going to love and some of those that we're going to loathe. But what it ultimately comes down to is that we have to be willing to enter into a space that we indulge in a little bit of sacred selfishness. We tune inward and we go with what is happening. We go with the flow. And we meet ourselves where we are at. For the good, for the meh, and for the disagreeable. Knowing that ultimately, even the words I've just said should be corrected. Because there is nothing and no situation or experience that ultimately has any meaning until we place a meaning upon it. Period. So if I attach a meaning that a situation is good, then that's the meaning it's going to have. If I attach a meaning to something and say that it's bad, then it means it's going to be bad. But if I can come into a situation from a place of total neutrality and just get curious about what's going on, I don't have to live in this world of polarity. I don't have to ride the pendulum as it swings from one polarity spectrum or into the other. I can instead explore and get curious and be more about, what's going on here than I am, why the fuck is this happening to me? So, though you may feel at times that there is something wrong, or that you're doing something wrong, or that nothing's going right, that's not really the case. That's just the meaning that you are attaching to it. And if you're willing to look at it through a different lens, if you're willing to attach a different meaning to it, then ultimately the situation and you yourself will change on account of it. But this is a month too about making connections. It's not just about our romantic connections. It's a 2-month. So we know it's about partnership. We know it's about connecting, but it's not just about, despite the fact that we have Valentine's in February, it is not just about our romantic relationships. It's also about our connection to ourself, our connection to our family, our friends. And it's also about not being afraid to reach out and connect with somebody who can potentially hold space for us, who can help us see what we can't, who can help us understand what we are perpetually confused about. And whether that's a friend, whether that is a professional, it doesn't matter. It just means that we are looking at what we are going through, number one, through the understanding that this is a collective experience. We're not alone. We're never alone. And we're never without support, even if you can't see them. Most of us can see, sense, or know if we open ourselves to it. But you're also not alone in the sense that whether it's a friend, whether it's family, a partner, or a professional of some kind, there is always somebody who is available, who will hold space for you, who will connect to you, to help you, even if that is just simply helping you connect to yourself, which we all need from time to time. Because we get caught up in the humanness and feel all the things and do all this and do all of that. And the next thing you know, we've forgotten and gotten so away from our core, how we want to feel, how we want to live, what we want and how and why we want it. So connection on top of clearing are the two main themes that we are working with throughout all of February. The third, I would say the first 3 weeks, perhaps the most. But what happens or transpires in that final week, and whether we go into March, clear and free and ready for the rebirth that is possible for us, or if we're still fighting the fact that we've got to clean our room, despite that our parents have given us all damn day, and now we can't go to our friend's house. It's up to us. That's a choice that only we can make. So I encourage each and every one of us to be as open and receptive and willing to connect and to clear, to not be afraid of what we might find out, to not be afraid of what others may find out, to not shame or guilt or lay blame on ourselves or anyone else if we're having a tough time, but to instead just go within, connect with the self. And if you're finding that difficult or overwhelming, then connect with somebody within your circle or outside of your circle, even who can hold the space to help you. Because ultimately, this is a really transformative month. And what we do or don't do, what we learn or don't learn, what we clear or don't clear has a lot to say for how the rest of the year, but especially the next 6 months, is going to go. So I hope that each and every one of you find yourselves brave and lovingly going within so that you are able to really just clear yourself of anything that does not serve your highest and best, that you don't want to bring in with you when you go into a situation, when you enter the world, when you interact with the world, and especially when you enter into the portal of March, which is going to be more so than perhaps other years, a portal into rebirth. Now, I want to say the more you can activate and radiate your light, the more that you are going to find this to be accessible. So if you don't already have a practice for that, it's time for you to develop one. And there's lots of ways that you can do it. I'm going to be hosting a workshop on 2/22 called Light Alchemy, $33, and we're going to come together in community, activate that source seed, expand that light. You can look on YouTube, I'm sure, and I'm sure you can look in many, many, many other spaces, because there's a reason why there are certain trends and themes that you see many light workers talking about, hosting things around, etc. And it's because we are connected. Well, all of us are connected. But it's because we are connected in such a way and picking up on the universal flow of energy that it's a natural aspect of that we would all be in a space of teaching, learning, speaking, talking about some aspect, maybe from a different perspective, but of some aspect of a common theme. And if you look into the space, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's the articles that are being put out there, whether stories, TikTok, whatever, this is a month for clearing and connection. And ultimately, that's going to realign you. It's going to bring you back to center, and it's going to give you the very best opportunity to go into March, having made the space and being completely ready for all that is available to you, that is waiting for you, that's waiting for all of us, unique to each of us. So I hope that this reading serves you well. I hope it empowers you to be proactive rather than reactive. And I send you all my love. Talk to you soon.